Hello everybody, and thanks so much for joining me again here on the channel. Now, you know, I love this time of year because here in Australia we have the Milky Way galactic core hanging low in the western sky. It makes it really easy to shoot multi-shot panoramas, and even single images can be absolutely spectacular. So recently I set out on a mini road trip to see if I could capture, well, something special. Now, we've had an awful lot of rain this year here around this district, and so there is water flowing everywhere in all the rivers and dams. Now, because of that, I was looking for a small dam close to the road that would enable easy access. And after all, I certainly didn't want to get into the soft mud on the side of the road. So eventually I came across a great little spot with water right up to the road itself. It was on a dirt back road with absolutely no traffic at all, and that is perfect for what I had in mind. So initially I had thought to bring my Zeppon slider in the car, and I was keen to shoot a day to night time lapse showing the movement of the stars and the clouds over the water. So I was looking for reflections and things like that. But to be honest, time was against me. The sun was just setting when I arrived on the scene. So I quickly set up the slider low down facing the western horizon with the grass and the water in the close foreground. There was also this awesome fence running from one side of the water to the other. Because I was using the Nikon 14-24 f2.8 lens set to 14mm, I was pretty comfortable with the focus being set to infinity and being able to get good sharpness across a field of view from the front to the back. Now, as I've mentioned many times on this channel, I often use the inbuilt intervalometer on the Nikon Z6 Mark II cameras to shoot automated day to night time lapses in program mode. So that's what I did. I set the camera to program mode and auto ISO. I decided to shoot 720 frames, which would take about 3 hours to complete. And I then set the slider, start from the left and slowly move across to the right side in that 3-hour time frame. And that's all there is to it. The camera and the slider were not connected at all. They simply did what I told them to do, and as long as they start and stop at the same time, then I'm happy. So I started the camera rolling, and the aperture was showing at f5.6 with a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second at ISO 100. As the time lapse progressed, it would gradually open up the aperture, lengthen the shutter speed, and raise the ISO in that order. Anyway, I knew that when it got dark, I'd need some form of lighting to shine on the foreground. From experience, I know that the lighting only needs to be very minimal to do the job. So I grabbed one of my Ulanzi VL49 LED panels and went in search of somewhere to attach it. Now, one of the great features of these lights is the fact that they have a magnet built into the back panel. And it just so happens that there was a small metal road marker on the side of the road about 7 or 8 meters from the water and fence in the foreground. So all I did was attach the light to the road sign, set the brightness to 1% and the color balance to about 4,500 Kelvin. And that's what I love about these lights. They're small and light. They can be dimmed right down to whatever you want, and they have a full RGB color temperature control. So I think these are absolutely awesome. So once I had my time lapse rolling, I knew I'd be staying put there for a while. Now, I had already scouted around this area, and I knew there were some lovely gum trees sitting on the hill just up from where I was. The trees looked absolutely amazing, silhouetted in front of the beautiful and colourful sunset that was happening. And I remember thinking to myself that if I could capture this with the time lapse, I'd be really happy. Anyway, as I pondered all of these things, I decided I'd like to shoot some Milky Way images and use longer focal lengths to really exaggerate the detail in the galactic core. At this stage, it was still well above the trees, but I knew that in an hour or so, I'd have the trees lined up perfectly. I also decided to get the tracker out, and not only that, I was going to use my Hydrogen Alpha modified Z6 camera for all of these shots. Now, I've been shooting a lot of single tracked exposures this year and been quite happy with the results. I figured that I could shoot the tracked exposures first and then the foreground shots after that. And they were going to be extra long exposure images for the foreground. At this stage, it was still not quite dark, but the soft high-level cloud drifting across the scene was already making the brighter stars glow as they appeared, and it was magnificent to watch. So, by the time I set up the tracker and did my polar alignment, it was pretty much dark enough to start shooting. Initially, I was going to shoot at 50mm, but I also had my 85mm lens with me and thought, well, why not give that a go and see how it would turn out. I was a lot closer to the trees anyway at this stage, and by using the longer focal lengths, I'd be able to really give the scene a different perspective. You know, I do often rave on about this, but one of my favorite things is to use the longer focal length lenses for my Nightscape photography. They bring a, look, I'm not sure how to put it, but maybe an ambience that resembles an art form rather than simply a photograph. Well, you can be the judge for yourselves, but as far as I'm concerned, I love these images. So I'd been shooting for quite a while at this stage, and after a cuppa and a biscuit back in the car, I thought I'd sneak over to where the time lapse was shooting away and see if I could perhaps compose a panorama of the same scene that it was actually shooting. So I put the Nikon 20mm f1.8 lens back on for this and proceeded to set up to shoot a multi-row panorama, including the water and fence in the foreground. The only lighting for this panorama was the Ulanzi, which was still glowing on the foreground from the left-hand side. Now, after a few test shots, I decided on my settings and shot 2 rows of 9 images. So a total of 18 images. Lots of overlap, at least 50% to make sure the stitching lines don't show. Well, I reckon you might like this one as well. If you look closely in this panorama, you'll see the trees I shot earlier with the 50 and 85mm lenses on the hill behind. It shows really well the different perspective you get by varying the focal length. Now, as I was shooting the panorama, the time lapse finished and I was really keen to see how that would turn out. You know, whenever I shoot a day to night time lapse, there's always a sense of trepidation as I go to review the images. Would it do what I intended? Oh, did the ISO and the shutter speed ramp as I expected? Well, I didn't need to worry at all. It worked out so well. So that's my little adventure out there under the stars. A fair bit of variety in these, but I must say I do like to do that if I can. I was actually pretty exhausted after the night of shooting, but in the end I was very happy with the results. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you like this type of content about taking images of the night sky and landscape, then I'd be delighted if you felt to subscribe to the channel and maybe give me a like, and I will certainly read and respond to your comments down below. All right, until I see you in the next video, you have a fantastic week. Bye for now.